Hey guys, this is Takimi. So for this video, we will be implementing the adding of employees for our custom property rental management software. So the reason why we have this feature here is because whenever the software or the business will be growing, so therefore the management or like the owner will need to have add additional staff just to cater the transactions or the processes for the firm. So that's why we needed to add new staff or employees, and then that will be later on associated with the permissions. Okay, so now let's proceed with the backend first. Okay, so here we have the account controller, which has the endpoint or route of API v1 account. And then we do have here, or like the endpoint that we will be using basically is like this one here, the post register async, which has a route of register. And it has the add user command payload. And then this endpoint will basically return the employee model. And this endpoint 2 has this has feature access like what we discussed in the previous videos. So yeah, so the next thing that we will be discussing is the add user command, which is here. So basically, the add user command has the response of the employee model, and then the payload will have the fields like the company ID, the name, the email, the password, and then the contact number. And then next is we will have the validator, which is this one here, the add user command validator. So basically, what this file does is this just basically validates the payload whenever that there's a data that's being passed within the payload that is not valid. So basically, that's what that's what this validator will do, is to check the payload if it matches the rules here. Okay. So next is we will go to the handler. So what we do have here now is the add user command handler, which has or inherits from the iRequest handler, and which has the add user command payload and then the response of employee model. So we also have here the user repository, the response service, and then the mapper. So we will go here to the method handle, which handles like the logic for this one here. Okay, so for this one here, what we did here was first is to get the company info. So basically, this is just basically validating if the company ID passed here, sorry, here is a valid company, but otherwise, if it's not, so therefore, this part here will return a status code of 400 or like a bad request, and then a message which indicates that the company is not found or company is not um existing. So next is here is the next thing that we will do will be to validate if the user exists. So which is done by this method here. The bool user exists is equal to the account repo that user exists, which has the parameters of company ID and then the email. So basically, what this method does or line does is to check if the the um checks the user if it exists. So because we can just test or we're just currently checking whether the user with that the email has already been added within the system or not yet. So here, if the user is already existing, so therefore the backend will return a status code of 400 and a error of a user has already been or exist with that specific email. But otherwise, if the user does not exist, so we will go to the line here. which is mapping the command to the employee model, which has the map user variable name with of type employee model, and then here we use this and the we use this employee model and mapping it to the actual user entity within the database, and then mapping if the user is a admin or not. But in this case, since we are trying to add a user or employee, so this property will be false. And then we also set here like the date created, which is the time of now, or like when did we try to add that user or employee. And then this part here, which is we are trying to generate like the hash for the password. And then for this one here, we are just passing the user here to the save user method, which will then be used to save the actual user, and then basically passing the user here, and then calling or creating a dynamic parameters payload to pass to the um, stored procedure, which is this one here, the USP underscore save new user. And as you can see here within the dynamic params, we pass the ID, the value for the is admin, name, the email, password hash, the date created, and so on and so forth. So basically, this save user method will return either a tuple value containing the user by ID or bool value and a boolean value if it is true or false, like what we see here. So going back, if this variable here, which is the is user save, is has the value of false, so basically the this part here will return a status code of 400, which is a bad request, and then has the message of error for adding of new user. But otherwise, if the saving is successful, so basically the backend will just return a status code of 200, which is the OK, and then a message of user with the email address of like this one here is successfully added. So basically, that's the logic for the implementation of our add user feature. So let's try to check and run this via Postman to see if or rather to validate if the logic that we have implemented is correct. So let's just build it for now. And then after building this one, let's try to run it in a few minutes. Okay, so let's try to run this API. Let's just wait for it. And then, okay, so now the API is running. So let's go to Postman and let's try this add employees request. So basically, let's start with validating if our validator is working, like this one here. So basically, let's start with the company ID, or let's just put this to 0, and let's just send a null data for the rest of the payload properties. And then one by one, we'll try to validate if the validator is working. So for now here, first off, rather is we will try to log in first, of course. Log in here using the testrealty1 at gmail.com admin account. Log in here, and then let's try to set the access token as the variable. Yeah. So, and also here we need to set the user ID, permission name, and then the company ID. So this is all set. The user ID is 100, 100,000 too. So yeah, yeah, that's correct. And then for the company ID, it's 100,005. Yeah, so it's correct. So now going back, let's send this request and right, send. Okay, so basically what we have here is register as access to command. So basically we saw here that the validator is working, like it validated the name, the email, the password, company ID, contact number, and yeah. So let's try to pass a invalid ID. So for let's just say that we pass here number of 10. Wait, why is this not registering here? Just a sec. This one here. Oh, sorry. API V1 account register. API V1 account register, right? Okay, so I'm not sure why it's not hitting the endpoint, but let's still try. So first off, okay, so when we try to provide the company ID, let's try and so basically it validated or rather since the rule that we have here for the company ID should be greater than zero and not null and not empty. So basically what we have here is the validator or like the validation logic that we put for the company ID was already working. We just need to tweak this like hitting the endpoint that we have here like this one here. Basically like getting the company ID, but we'll just try that later. Okay, so let's just proceed to the other name or like the other payload. So for this one here, for the name, let's just try to put let's say test employee 3 or like let's just send a null value for this one here and let's just check if yeah the name here has sorry like the other error here for the name field has disappeared because we pass a empty string, but let's pass now a sample valid data. So in this case we do have this test employee 3, so let's try to send it. Okay, we notice that upon passing a valid payload for this property here for the name, then the error name here disappeared. So basically the logic for the validator that we set for the name here is working. Okay, so going back, let's just try to so employee is free. Employee 3. Let's just try to send this request without the at or without the at gmail.com and let's see if it's working. Yeah, it did validate it. So let's try to do at. Yep, it validated it well again. And let's just try to add the gmail.com. Press send. Okay, so when sending the valid data for the email, so the validator validated it. And now it's no longer displaying the error here within the errors part here. So let's try to do the password. So here, yeah, the validator logic still worked. So now let's try to do again this one here. Okay, so for the contact number, let's try baptist string, send it. Okay, so let's just try to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this should be still not working. Okay, it's good. And if we put here 0, 9, and then we put it here a character of dash. So basically, yep, it's correct. So if we put a valid ID here, what will what will happen now is we should be able to hit the endpoint via the backend and then start to validate this company if this is existing or not. So let's try that. Hmm, contact number is valid. So wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this should work. However, in the validator, mm, validate phone number, which is okay. But why is it that, let's try to do a debugging here. So why contact number is invalid? Let's to the contact number, a string. Let's try to put an endpoint there. So basically the phone number is here. So this should work. So this is valid. So yeah, the contact number should be okay. So now, so the next thing that the logic will do will be to read or basically retrieve the company info and validating it if it's a valid company registered within the system or not. So here we pass 10. So basically here the company ID that we pass here is 10. So basically this company is not existing. So this should return a error within the backend. So here we got the info. So we have null. So since this is null, so it will return this status code of 400 and then the error of company not found. Okay, so yeah, we basically the company that we or rather the company ID that we pass is not existing. So let's just use a proper company ID. So let's say this one here, and then we just put it here, and then send it again. Company ID, why? Uh, company ID should be greater than 0, which is correct. But how come that this is not the case? Hmm. Let me just do some debugging for this one here. Just a sec. So why is it not working? Company ID is this one here. Okay. And then so this should work. So we can add. So let's try to run this again. Now let's try to run this again. And why is it company not found? So again, was here. Oh wait, sorry. Wait. Oops, just a sec. Okay, so let me just run it again. My bad. So let's try to run the API again and then. Mhm. Why is it double? Okay, what happened is it ran the app twice. So why is that? Okay, so let me try again to run this. That's weird. But let's just try it again. What? Why? Failed to bind address 5000 is already in use. Hmm, stop. Just why is that like that? Let me try to just Google for now. Okay. So wait. It's configurations, multi-launch. Mhm. Mhm. It's okay. Hmm. Let me just reopen this one. Apologies for the technicalities. I'll just figure out why this is like this. Just so again, let's try to run the IDE or the JetBrains Rider, and then let's try to rerun the app. Okay, let's clean it and then build it, and then let's check it again. Run the API, and then test it. So let's try to log out. So this one here. Let's try to log in again. Then hopefully Let's try to add this one. Then hopefully we will hit the endpoint. Okay, so we hit it. And then now since we passed in the valid ID or company ID of 100,005, so basically this should get things going. Yeah. So now, so here the company is a valid company, so we move on to validating the user existing, and then the user existing is um, false, so it did validate the to okay. And then now we are proceeding with the actual binding of the payload to the user entity, and then assigning if it is a admin or not, and then for the date created, and then generating the password, the password hash rather, and then the saving of the user, and then voila, we have now successfully added or registered a new employee or user. And so with that, we can see here that the payload basically return the employee model, which contains the company ID, the name, the email, and of course the contact number, and then the password with null because obviously this should not be returned within the payload. And then the success value of true, status code of of the other status code of 200, and then the message user employee3 at gmail.com was successfully added. So now we have confirmed that the backend is working. So now let us proceed with the integrating the front end. So let's just remove these endpoints first and then stop the application. And then here we'll just try to do the multi-launch. And then we'll just close this files and open the file for the app itself. So I think we have here the areas, the accounts, I think. Yeah, the the new user, this one here, and then we have the users, and basically just yeah, this is the save employee, and then we also have the integration here for the user service. Okay, so let's just try to yeah. Okay, so for the front end, we have this file called new user.cshtml. So basically, this file is the UI for the form for which we can add a new employee, and this uses basically the employee model. This one here, which is basically the same within the backend, but we just have our separate copy of it within our MVC frontend. So here we do have the form here, which calls to the area of the accounts and then the controller of users, and then the action of save new employee, which we which will be called later when we submit the form. And for this part here, this will basically display the errors from the back end to the front end, and then we have these fields here like the name, the email, the password, the contact number, and then the save employee. Okay, so once we press this save employee button here, this will trigger the accounts users save new employee action, which is this one here, like this one here. So basically, this method save new employee has this post attribute with the validate anti-forgery token attributes on top of it, and then it has the parameter of employee model. So basically, this employee model is the same model that we use for our form here, like this one here. And then moving forward, from the object itself, we just assign the company by ID, uh, um, having the value from the session, which is the CID, and then the same goes with the user ID from the session, and then the token. And then we just call the save employee base sync and passing the object as the parameter, and then the company by ID, and then the user by ID and the token, which is here. We just pass it here. And for the implementation, so basically here it is. So we have the save employee base sync having the employee model as the parameter, and then the company ID, the user ID, and then the token. So what we do have here is again the string content of payload, basically serializing the object to a JSON format, and then here we pass the headers needed for the request. So basically, this is the equivalent for the implementation of this one here, like the headers that we saw in Postman, like the authorization, the UID, function name, the CID. So that's the same with like this one here. And then here is the actual sending of the um, request along with the payload. So the endpoint we use is API v1 account register, which is the same as the endpoint that we have here. And then the like then again we have this validating the server request. So basically the status code here is successful because we were able to communicate the handshake from the front end to the back end. And then here is we just um, read the we just read the string JSON text from the response, and then um, whenever the response was successful, so we just deserialize the JSON response to the appropriate model, which is this one here. And then for this part here, whenever that the parsing contains just the error. So basically, we basically what we did here was just to get the error from that API response. Then here, the same goes with like the other implementations, which we just validated if the success was false, and then the status code was 400 or debug request. So that means that there was an error. So we return the null object and then the response errors here containing the errors. But otherwise, if the API response was successful and then the status code of it was okay or 200, so basically we we will be returning the API response, which is the like this one here. And then for the errors, we put null because the request was successful and we have valid data from the server. So here, otherwise, if the response was not successful, so basically what we do here was just to parse the string errors from the backend, and then just basically deserializing that messages, and then returning it to the front end for display. And then like what we have here for the response, it's null, but for the errors, we do have the return from here. Okay, so without further ado, let's try to run this one just to validate the that the um, just to validate that the integration was successful. Okay, so let's first view the. Okay, so we have um, test employee, let's say 4. We are now at employee 4. So now let's try to run both the front end and then the back end and test if the integration is successful or not. Okay, so now here we have the login. So let's try to log in with the account of testrealty1@gmail.com. Then log in, and then we will be using the employees. So we have this employee here, add employee. Okay, so let's do the same thing that what we did within Postman. That first is we test the validator if it's correct, if it's correctly implemented, and then um, we will continue with the passing of valid payload from the front end. So now let's try to test the form. Let's just try to save the form, and then yeah. So basically, um, as what you can see here, that the validator work, like the same thing that we saw from Postman just a while ago when we tested that whenever we pass a empty payload, so basically the server return a bunch of errors, which which is what we also see here. And then when we try to put valid data, so for example, um, test employee or little by little, let's try it. Okay, so the name, so basically, the error for the name disappeared because we passed a valid data here. So now let's try to put also a email. Mhm. And then here. Okay, so for the password. Okay, so now the remaining thing will be the contact number. So let's just try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this should not work. Yep, because the format for the number should be 09 and not other starting numbers. Like basically like for the two starting numbers here. So yeah, the contact number validation is working. So now we'll try to pass a character, but with a valid starting. So this again, this should not work since we passed a character here. So now whenever we try to pass a valid phone number, so basically this form should be successful. Okay, so now as what you can observe that when we pass a valid payload within the form and then try to save that employee, we were basically redirected to the employee list and displaying or showing to us that the employee that we just added, which in this case is employee 4. So we saw here, or we are currently seeing in this page that we have successfully added employee 4 as the user or employee. So yeah, so that means that our integration for our front end and back end is working and is now successfully integrated like what you see here. So yeah, I think that's it for our implementation for the um, front end and back end for the our rather for the custom property rentals platform that we have. So I hope that you learned something from the implementation video and then hope you find it interesting too. So the next feature that we will be working on for the next episode will be the viewing of the employees since we are done with adding new employees for our um, portal. So yeah, uh, once again, I hope you find this video useful and hope that you have learned something from it, especially if you are within the real estate or property rentals management business. So yeah, stay tuned for the next video for the viewing of the employees, and thank you and subscribe. Bye bye.